This episode was brought to you by Manscaped.
Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're looking at The Gentleman. I didn't know shit about this movie going into it. I hadn't seen any trailers. All I knew it was Guy Ritchie's newest production. I haven't been too big of a fan of Guy Ritchie's recent works, save for a couple. Some of them just been pretty goddamn stinky, to be honest. But I still like his work, so that was enough to get me pretty interested in the movie. And I'll be honest, it surprised me with how good it was. It put a finger way up my asshole and gave me a big surprise with how much I enjoyed it. I was expecting it to just be kind of mediocre and just pretty safe, but it's definitely more than that. It's a very good movie with very good performances from the main cast. I really enjoy the narrative the most. It has a really great story to tell, which in a nutshell is about a man who sells drugs, who gets into some hot, deep shit, and things start to get messy, and that shit's gotta get cleaned up. I like the way they tell the story. They have Hugh Grant retroactively telling you the events that happened, and he embellishes them from time to time, which makes it really cool. It's a nice little element to it, and then sometimes you have to even question whether or not the information you're being fed by him is even real, if that's what happened, which is great. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and I really like how the plot starts to get convoluted in the middle and the end. Convoluted in a good way. That's not a negative, not like a fucking Kojima convoluted plot where you got a baby in a pickle jar and then all of a sudden you're getting hunted by a fucking time-traveling vampire garbage man. Everything makes sense in its universe, and it's really great to have all these moving parts. It gets a bit chaotic. It's just a really enjoyable story that I liked from start to finish, and I really liked the way they executed it. But more than that, I liked the way the characters interacted with one another. For example, when you had two friends that were all in the drug business together, they'd talk and they'd, constantly be calling themselves, you're a stiff cunt, you're a wet cunt, sloppy cunt, soggy cunt, all that kind of shit. Just cute little playful banter between each other that was goofy at times, but always felt just right. Just the right amount of goofy and wackiness, and I loved it. Even some of the comedic one-liners landed pretty well, I thought. It was just really enjoyable. Even when the characters didn't like each other, like two characters that fucking hate each other, they give these like supervillain monologues to one another and then ended by calling them a dusty cunt. Really, in general, the dialogue just slapped. The main complaint I have about the movie is it should have ended 10 minutes before it actually did. It's the same problem I had with Baby Driver's ending. It just goes way too far for the sake of closure, where it wants to close off every possible loop that any Redditor could possibly think of. And it's to the detriment of the movie because it had a great stopping point, a super strong final act that I thought wrapped up lovely. And then out of nowhere, it brings something else in. And it's not out of nowhere, it's something they hint at, but it's something that they didn't need to do at all. And it added nothing to the narrative, the plot, the universe, or the characters, really. And it only lasted 2 scenes. There's only 2 scenes that popped up at the end that were super quick, probably about a minute of screen time total before that's totally resolved. And then they spend the next 9 or 10 minutes talking about that and like over explaining why that happened and the repercussions of such. It was just unnecessary. It didn't know when to close the curtain. It'd be like if you went to show and tell and the fucking class went wild for the first thing you brought out and they expect you to be done after that standing ovation, but then you're like, wait a minute, and then I have this little action figure. And then it's like, oh, okay, cool, some more claps, but you didn't need to show us the second one. We like the first one better. It seemed unnecessary. They should have ended it at a certain point, but they kept going. It's not the biggest deal in the world. The movie was so good that they ended it twice, or gave you 2 endings, basically. But it really was to the detriment of the overall ending, because I thought they had a great spot to stop, and they just didn't. They just kept taking a bow. It's not horrible. It's, even with all that, it's still not bad or anything like that. Just unnecessary. Another complaint that I had about the movie is, although the plot does get pretty convoluted, it's also extremely predictable. It's nothing very new in the crime genre or gangster genre or anything like that. It follows like a very formulaic plot that I'm pretty sure the majority of people will put together within the first 40 minutes. You can probably guess where it's going to eventually lead, which I feel is a bit disappointing because when it does get to that really messy stage, there's a lot of moving parts that really could have led to a very different outcome and maybe thrown a bunch of different loops at you, but ultimately it ends the way you expect it to given what you are on screen, which I feel was just a bit underwhelming and a little disappointing. but it still is satisfying. It doesn't need to fucking reinvent the genre or anything. It was still satisfying to see that kind of story play out, especially with the characters here. So I'm not overly disappointed. It's just I feel like there could have been more that they did with it to not be, in that same formulaic wheelhouse there. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. Let's plug it into the moist meter. I'm giving The Gentleman a nice 85%. I think the movie from top to bottom was just an enjoyable one, with a couple of flaws for sure, but just a very solid movie with a great cast that put on a really solid performance. Really enjoyable, and I actually found it to be one of the most comedic movies, like actually good comedies of the last year or so, like all of 2019 till now. Most of the comedies have sucked fuck, but this one was pretty solid, and it wasn't even like a primarily comedic movie. He just had some great one-liners in there and some great back and forth, so that was really surprising to me. I enjoyed it a lot. As you're no doubt aware, I have a penis, and that penis has some balls. And I'm a pretty hairy man, so there's often a lot of hair down there, and at streams I've talked about the uncomfortable trimming situations I've had, but luckily that shit's in the past thanks to Manscaped. Manscaped had an engineering team spend 18 months in the ball grooming nutsack trimming facility, the laboratory, coming up with the ultimate design, and finally they've released the Lawnmower 3.0. The new gold standard in male grooming technology. This bad boy's got a 7,000 RPM motor, battery life of up to 90 minutes if you really gotta tackle a war zone down there, an LED that illuminates the grooming areas for precision grooming. It's as high tech as it gets. It's fucking incredible. And the best part, it's got skin-safe technology, so you're never accidentally cutting yourself down there. So it's more efficient and it's safer. If you're interested to try Manscaped, use code MOIST at manscaped.com to get 20% off and free shipping. That's code MOIST, manscaped.com, 20% off and free shipping. Fuck yeah.